It was something I ate. My stomach bellowed and ached as I looked to the dark highway of Interstate 35. The time was 1:35 a.m., and I wondered what had made my insides turn sour. It could have been a few things: the grease-filled bologna sandwich I had for dinner, or the breakfast I had ordered at Denny's. The pressure was the worst part. It felt like the contents of my stomach were pressing on my bowels and could seep out at any moment. It would be a shame too, because I just paid to have my car detailed only 3 days before I made this trip. I needed to find a bathroom, and it needed to happen quickly. I scanned the road looking for any sign. I would have even settled for a wooden outhouse if I was that desperate. "Thank God," I shouted to myself, as I could see the sign that pointed me to a rest stop. My eyes weren't the only thing that noticed it, because my stomach began to cramp even more. I punched the gas and sped off. It was a race of what was faster, my car or the bowel movement. I sped off the exit, leading to an empty parking lot that sat in front of 2 buildings made of light brick and a small play area for children. I parked directly in front of the building that said the restrooms were up ahead and exited my car quickly. My eyes could see the entrance to both restrooms. The woman's door was open, but the men's door was closed. It scared me, and I prayed it was not out of order. I was about to lose the contest, as I could feel myself beginning to leak. I ran over and shoved the door hard. I stepped inside, almost slipping on a loose piece of paper that laid on the floor. It would have been a mess had I slipped. The room had tile walls that were a light tan colour, and the floor resembled it as well. It had a line of 8 stalls that lied next to a set of urinals. I dashed into the first stall and sat on the toilet. I could feel it exit my body, quickly and violently. The stench made me realise it was the bologna sandwich. It was a relief that I made it. I reached down to search my pant pockets for my phone. The sound of crumpling and loose change quickly revealed that I had left my phone inside the car. It meant I would have to settle for vandalism on the stall walls for some sort of reading material. "Ryan C. screwed your mum," I read out loud. I didn't know many Ryans, but this one seemed like a class act. It always made me wonder what ran through a person's mind when they carved such things. I finished my business and wiped myself, then flushed the toilet. I stepped out of the stall into the sink, washing my hands. I looked up to see a small window that someone had scribbled on with Sharpie. It was time for me to get back on the road, as I retrieved a paper towel and dried my hands. The trash can sat next to the exit. It was empty. Someone had changed it out some time before I had arrived. The paper rested on the floor next to the door, and I heard it crinkle as I stepped on it to exit. It was strange though. The door would not open as I pulled on it. I tugged on it, but it would not budge. That's when I looked down to the paper and lifted my foot. It was a note written in bold lines. "Lock busted. Do not close door." "You have to be kidding me," I shouted as I tried pulling on the door again. I used every bit of strength I had and attempted to open it, but it remained sealed. I began to bang on it, hoping that someone would hear me. "Hey, can anyone hear me?" I screamed. I walked over to the window and looked around to see if I could escape using it, but it was too small, and there was no way I could fit through it. I looked around to see if I could find a latch, but it seemed to be sealed and made of thick glass. I was stuck in a rest stop bathroom. It was an uncomfortable position. My head leaned against the stall with Ryan's carving and my body sitting on the toilet. I did not know how much time had passed, but I knew it had been a while. The sound of the door opened, and I bolted out of the stall. "Don't close the door!" I yelled while looking on to a heavy-set man. His brown brows lifted, and his green eyes behind his black-rimmed glasses widened. He looked startled, while the door closed behind him. "Do you always hang out in bathrooms and scare people?" he asked with a voice that shook. He looked timid, with dark hair that was thinning on top. He wore a green button-up with a pair of brown slacks. He was not fashionable at all. It looked like he'd come out of the 70s. "Yeah, it's my favourite pastime," I replied sarcastically while I watched him shuffle over to a urinal and relieve himself. "Do you at least have a phone?" He zipped his pants and shook his head. "No, I don't have a cell phone. I already have enough people talking to me without having one." "Well, it looks like you're stuck in here with me." "What do you mean?" he replied, as I observed him walk over to the sink and wash his hands. I watched as he lathered his hands carefully and rinsed them thoroughly. It took a moment, but he walked over and grabbed a paper towel to dry them. "The door is broken. It won't open." "That doesn't sound right." "Alright, go try it," I said as I saw him walk over and try to pull it open. The man pulled and tugged, and even tried to push it. He turned around with a scared expression on his face. I had tried to tell him. It was the whole reason I'd yelled at him in the first place. "She told me I shouldn't come here. I knew I should have listened, but I had to use the bathroom so gosh darn bad that I did it anyway." "Well, maybe your friend will come check on you and open the door for us." "She can't help us, I'm afraid." "Well, that's just great," I mumbled and walked over to the sink, staring into the mirror. The man walked over to me and stood next to me. He looked up to the window for a moment and pondered. "Have you tried the window yet? I would try, but I'm afraid that I like food a little much and wouldn't be able to squeeze in there." "I already tried. It won't open, and I'm not sure we could break it." "Well, looks like we might be in here for a little while. My name is Randall, by the way. What is your name, mister?" "It's Ryan," I lied. "Nice to meet you, Ryan. It's a good thing we are stuck in here rather than being stranded outside." "Why is that?" I asked with a hint of annoyance. I didn't think it could get any worse than being stuck in the bathroom, but somehow fate had found a way by placing a man named Randall inside with me. He seemed to be absolutely useless. "They say there's a fellow called the Bagman. Likes to cruise these roads." "The Bagman?" I asked. "Yeah, the murderer. He's up to about 5 victims now. He likes to tie up men and put a bag over their head. They suffocate to death, apparently. The police seem to think he likes to watch them struggle. I imagine it is like watching a fish out of water just flopping around, you know?" "I can't say that I do," I replied while I leaned back against the wall and gazed to the ceiling. Randall sat a few feet away from me and adjusted himself. "That's a really stupid name, I think." "Huh? Why not call him the Asphyxiator?" "I mean, that's what the papers call him." "Well, it's a poor choice for a name," I said while walking over to the sink. I turned on the water and cupped my hands, filling it, then took a drink. Also, maybe 2 strangers shouldn't be talking about serial killers, especially in our predicament. "I'm sorry, Ryan. I'm terrible at small talk." "You don't say." "It's just, I don't really talk to many people. I'm very off-putting to most people." "Would never have guessed it," I replied as I stared at the door and around the room. I had to find a way out before Randall drove me crazy. I wandered towards the door and studied it. There had to be a way to pry it open. "I don't think so," I heard Randall's voice mumble. I glanced back to see his head turned towards a stall. He looked as if he were talking to someone. If he wasn't already strange enough, now he was talking to himself. "I think we're safe in here," he mumbled softly. "I know you said that the bagman could kill me, but I got Ryan over there, so strength in numbers." The man was a loon. I quickly scanned the room again to find something. Anything that would get me the hell out of the goddamn restroom. "I know that, but I can't do much right now anyhow," Randall continued and started to irritate me. "Who are you talking to, Randall?" I asked as his eyes looked shocked. His face turned a bright red with his cheeks flushed and his eyes not even blinking. I could tell he was trying to think of an answer, but he kept drawing a blank as he stared at me. "Are you trying to talk to me?" I asked. No, you remember how I mentioned people?" he stuttered. "Off-putting was a word you used," I interrupted. He slouched his shoulders and head tilted towards the floor. "I see people that others can't see. They are spirits that tell me when bad things are about to happen." "Is one in here now?" "Yeah, it's a woman. She's standing next to me, and she appeared to me when I first got out of my car to use the bathroom. I told her I had to go really bad, but she told me that I needed to leave." "I see. Have you always seen these supposed spirits?" He nodded. "Ever since I was a little kid. Everyone thinks I'm crazy, but I've learned to live with it. They always guide me, and I've learned to appreciate them." "Are they ever wrong?" "No, they seem to be always right," he said as he raised his head to talk to me. I strolled back over to where he sat. He gave me the creeps. It was a sound, a rumble of an engine that gave me a bit of hope, and I looked out the window. It was a truck driving into the parking lot. "Thank God!" I exclaimed as I watched the red pickup slowly pull in. It was hard to tell from the distance, but the truck looked older and rusted. The driver parked next to my car and sat inside as Randall came over to look outside. He watched with me for a brief moment, then turned back around. "I got a bad feeling," Randall said. "This could be who she was warning me about. We shouldn't let him in." I turned to see him with a look of worry in his eyes. The sound of a door rattled took my attention away as I shifted to see a man step out of the truck. The man wore a black jacket and grey cargo pants with a trucker hat. He was a stout-looking person who lumbered slowly towards the restroom. "Screw that, Randall. I'm ready to get out of here," I replied. "She said I was in danger, and I told you the spirits are always right." "Well, why don't they give specifics then? If they are so goddamn helpful, maybe they could give you a name or what that person looks like." "It doesn't work that way." "No. You know why, Randall? Because you don't see spirits. You're clearly mentally ill." He got silent. I could tell from the expression on his face that I hurt his feelings. A complete stranger until he managed to find himself in the bathroom with a busted lock. "They are real, Ryan," he replied. I walked over to Randall and stood next to him. The sound of the door bursting open startled him as he stepped inside. The man stood there for a moment, looking at the two of us before stepping inside. The door began to slowly close as I began to panic and shouted, "Don't let that door close!" It felt like the room had suddenly gone to slow motion. The door closed and latched once again. The man seemed to be ignoring us as he walked over to a urinal and started to use the bathroom. I cursed myself of why I couldn't get anyone to listen about the damn busted restroom door. I felt a tug on my arm and looked to see Randall with fear pointing towards the man's pants. It took a moment, but that is when I saw something alarming. The dark red stain on the man, and Randall whispered, "I told you we're in danger." The man coughed and cleared his throat. "Am I interrupting anything here, gentlemen?" He finished his business and flushed the toilet, zipping his pants in front of us. It was the first good look of the man. He had thick eyebrows that made him look angry. His face had a worn look with a thick brown mustache. It was something about his eyes, though. They showed an intensity. "No, mister, we're in a bit of a bind here," Randall said nervously. "You see, the two of us have been stuck in the bathroom for a little bit." "Do you have a phone?" I chimed in. "I do, but I ain't letting a stranger use it." "I don't want to use it. I just want to get out of here, and you are just as stuck in here like us." "What's the hurry?" he asked as he lumbered to the sink. I noticed his jacket sleeves had similar stains that matched his pants. Randall noticed too, and his legs started to shake. I stepped forward next to the man. I could see little stains of red and dirt circling the sink. "Listen, man, I am tired and just want to go home." He turned around, staring me down. "Do you know what happens around these parts?" "I don't really care," I replied. "I just want out of this goddamn bathroom." "Bad things happen to people like you," he growled as he reached into his pocket, pulling out a knife. It was a long blade that was thick, and I observed the dry blood on it. He sneered at me, and I backed away, raising my hands. Randall stood stiff. He was terrified. "It's him, Ryan," Randall cried out. "It's the fellow they call the Bagman." "Maybe I am, maybe I ain't," he growled. "I don't want any trouble," I said, trying to remain calm. He grinned at me as he took a step closer to grab me, and grabbed me by my shirt menacingly. It crossed my mind that Randall was right, and I was going to die in a rest stop outside of Laredo. He laughed. "That's too bad, because you found it anyways." I stared down to see the knife was close to my stomach. The man started to pull it back, ready to plunge it inside me. The only thing I could do was curse myself for eating the bologna sandwich that had set these events in motion. I should have just crapped my pants. "I'm not dying today!" Randall screamed when he jumped towards the two of us. It happened so fast, the man's grip loosened, allowing me to fall to the floor. The sound was sickening as I watched him stumble backwards with his head hitting the porcelain of the sink. I sat on the floor and watched the blood pour onto the tile floor. The knife lay inches away from his hands as I crawled quickly, grabbing it and struggling to stand up straight. Randall gazed down to the man, but he did not move, and he seemed shocked at what he had done. "What did you do, Randall?" "I killed him. I killed the serial killer." Randall lifted his head up, and the two of us locked eyes for a moment. I gripped the knife tightly and said, "I will pry this door open, hopefully." "What do you want me to do?" "Take off his belt, and if you have one, take it off too." "Why do you need the belt?" "I don't have time to explain, but just trust me, alright?" I hurried to the door and started to slide the knife close to the lock. It took a moment and a lot of physical effort, but I could hear the sound of a pop. The door now opened. Randall stepped behind me and said, "I got the belts, just like you asked." I stood next to him and he had a slight smile on his face. It almost made me feel bad as I pointed the knife to him. I want you to lie down on the ground. Why do you want me to do that? I shouldn't have to explain myself because you hear voices and just killed a man. It's nothing personal, but it's for my own protection. I don't want to, Ryan. I want to get out of here, just like you. Get down on the ground, I shouted. Randall slowly crouched down and laid prone. He had a look of confusion on his face. Now turn over where you're on your stomach. I grabbed the belts and tightly wrapped them around his legs. He didn't squirm too much while I grabbed his arms, bounding them. He tried to look back at me and whimpered. I'm not going to hurt you. I killed the bagman. I told you that was such a dumb name, I replied as I reached into my pocket, grabbing a clear, thick, plastic bag. I really hoped the papers would think of a better name. But Randall was right about one thing. I do like to watch them flop around.